All right, we're going to look at imperfect competition today. We've studied perfect competition, essentially no competition, that would be monopoly. Now we're going to look at two types of imperfect competition. Imperfectly competitive markets are both allocatively and productively inefficient. That separates them from perfect competition. One form of imperfect competition is oligopoly. All right, oligopoly have a few firms that dominate the industry. They are very and extremely interdependent. We'll be looking at game theory and payoff matrices for this, but understand that when you have just a few firms that dominate the industry, when one acts, the other or others are guaranteed to act. So they can't just do things in their own self-interest. They have to do things based on what they think the response of the other big firms in the industry are going to do. There's some ambiguity for some parts of trying to figure out if something's an oligopoly. The product might be similar, probably differentiated, but it might be similar. You are very much likely to have pretty high barriers to entry. And it's in oligopoly firms' best interest to keep people out. They may not be able to do that, but they try to. And they may have some form of price control, similar to a monopolist if they want to, but that depends on the amount of collusion. Collusion is when the oligopoly firms get together and agree not to compete on price. Oftentimes they might agree to a specific type of output, etc., but they're not going to compete over price. Right? They're going to set output for everybody, which would then allow them to have price move straight up to the demand curve, and essentially, their diagrams, when they are collusive, look just like a monopoly. So when you have collusion, and this would be oligopoly with collusion, right? You might hear the phrase cartel. Right? It essentially means the largest firms in an industry, almost dominating the entire industry, are going to act like a monopolist. Have a downward sloping demand curve. You have a marginal revenue curve that cuts on the demand curve, a marginal cost curve, just like every industry where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. That's our quantity. Quantity with collusion, straight up to the demand curve for price. What I've done is drawn your average total cost curve below, right? Because there's be a reason for the oligopolies to collude, and that's to ensure economic profits, or we might call them abnormal profits. If they collude and can keep the collusion going, they will end up with abnormal or economic profits in both the short and the long term. Right? If they can't collude, right, they may end up competing greatly enough to where we see a situation that we'll see like in monopolistic competition, where they compete so much that they drive demand curves and other things to a specific place to whereby only normal profits will be achieved. The other type of imperfect competition is monopolistic competition. In monopolistic competition, there are many, many sellers. They do have a differentiated product. In the short run, they could earn economic profits, but in the long run, the equilibrium will be normal profits because of low to no barriers to entry. So their long run equilibrium, okay, this will look just like a monopoly, just like a collusive oligopoly diagram, with one key exception. Okay? Again, downward sloping demand curve, a marginal revenue curve that splits it, a marginal cost curve where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. That's where output is set. When you have output, you go up to the demand curve to determine price. In long run monopolistic competition equilibrium, right, firms will enter and leave until we see average total cost equal price, and that will create normal profits. If monopolistically competitive firms are earning economic profits in the short run, more firms will enter the industry. When they do that, they will create a situation where normal profits exist. When monopolistically competitive markets, or firms I should say, are losing money in the short run, firms will leave. That will increase price until average cost equals price, ensuring normal profits in the long run. Once again, thank you very much for listening. Keep your opportunity cost high and your expectations low.